I stood at the threshold of my home, the door swinging shut behind me, carrying my heart with it. "You're not welcome here anymore, Mom," Nathan's voice echoed in my ears, each word a sharp blade slicing through me. How could my own son cast me aside so easily? The pain felt like a weight pressing down on my chest, each breath becoming a struggle. I had tried my best to raise him, nurture him, and give him a life full of love. Had it all been for nothing? As I walked down the street, the chill of autumn brushed against my skin, reminding me that the world continued to spin, indifferent to my devastating loss. I felt a storm brewing inside, a mix of anger, confusion, and disbelief. What had led us to this moment? Everything had seemed fine just days before, but now I was left standing alone, frozen in the harsh reality of my new existence. I turned a corner and spotted Mrs. Caldwell, my neighbor, quietly sitting on her porch, knitting needles clicking away. She glanced up and her brow furrowed with concern. "Olivia, is everything all right?" I forced a smile, but it felt like a mask slipping down my face. "Just a little family drama," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Nathan, he wants some space." Mrs. Caldwell frowned. "That boy doesn't know what he's saying. You've always been there for him." "Maybe I wasn't enough," I whispered, more to myself than to her. Turning away, I hurried home, my thoughts tangled in confusion. It was time for a serious change in my life. My independence had been an afterthought for too long. Inside, the stillness of my house suffocated me. What had once been warm and inviting now felt cold and empty. I knew I needed to reclaim my life. That night, I took a deep breath and made a plan. My heart pounded as I mentally listed everything I needed to do to pave a new path for myself. I started by changing the locks. It was a symbolic move, a way to shut out the hurt and reclaim control. As I twisted the new key in the lock, a sense of empowerment surged through me. I then took the next step. I opened my laptop and, with trembling fingers, I closed our joint bank account. I stared at the screen as the confirmation flashed, feeling like I was shedding a skin that had grown too tight. The next day, I decided to install a hidden camera around the house. As invasive as it felt, I needed to know what was happening while I was away. I couldn't shake the nagging suspicion that Nathan's words hadn't come from nowhere. It was time to catch the truth, no matter how bitter it turned out to be. Days passed, and I watched the footage with growing anxiety. The camera captured moments that twisted my stomach into knots. Nathan laughing with his father, Mark, and moments of secrecy between Mark and his sister, Lauren. The betrayal stung deeper than I could have anticipated. Each laugh felt like thunder rolling in my heart, a violent storm of emotions swirling inside me. I prepared for the inevitable confrontation, maintaining my calm. I knew I had to gather evidence, not just for my own sanity, but for Nathan's future, too. I sat in the quiet of my new, locked house, the weight of betrayal pressing on my chest. It was a strange feeling, this mixture of anger and sorrow. I had thought that family was supposed to be a sanctuary, but Nathan had shattered that illusion. My hands trembled as I reviewed the footage from the hidden camera. What started as a mere plan for surveillance soon turned into a heart-wrenching revelation. As I clicked play, I felt a knot form in my stomach. There was Nathan, laughing with Mark and Lauren, their faces glowing with joy, while I stood alone in the cold shadows. I had believed that my home was a safe haven, but now it felt like a prison built from my own heartbreak. Each shared moment between them cut deeper, revealing layers of manipulation I had overlooked for so long. "Mom, can you just stop being so dramatic?" Nathan's voice echoed in my mind, a cruel reminder of our last conversation. I remembered how he had looked at me, disappointment mingled with something colder, almost like disdain. My heart ached, but I couldn't let it
Paralyze me any longer. Okay, this is how it's gonna be, I muttered to myself, an unexpected resolve rising within me. I needed to gather proof of their betrayal, something concrete that I could present. I'd spent too long feeling powerless, and it was time to take my life back. Days passed as I continued to watch the recordings. Each clip revealed snippets of whispered conversations and laughter shared among my son, husband, and sister-in-law, moments I would never be part of again. I watched as they exchanged knowing glances, and it became clear to me they had created a world in which I didn't belong. Emily, you need to keep calm, I reminded myself quietly. Get the evidence. Then you'll confront them. Each time Mark and Lauren appeared on the screen, my anger simmered, but I had to be smart. I had to plan my response carefully. One evening, I overheard them talking about a weekend trip. My chest tightened. I knew I had to act fast. The next day, I went to a locksmith and changed the locks. I also visited the bank, closing our joint account. It felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders. I was reclaiming my independence. I could feel the beginnings of freedom, a flicker of light in the darkness that had enveloped my life. "Do you really think you can just leave?" Mark had asked incredulously one evening when I confronted him about the camera. "You don't even know what you're doing." "I know exactly what I'm doing," I replied fiercely, feeling a rush of strength. "You and Lauren think you can manipulate Nathan against me, but you've underestimated me for too long." His expression soured, and I could see the anger rising in him, but I was done being afraid. The emotional confrontations escalated as I approached each of them individually. Nathan, with his teenage bravado, tried to brush me off, but seeing the camera footage had shattered my denial. "You're choosing them over your mother," I said, my voice quivering with hurt and disappointment. "Do you really believe I made all those sacrifices for nothing?" "I don't want to hear it, Mom," he shouted back. But my heart was set. It was a quiet Tuesday morning when the reality of my situation began to sink in deeper than ever before. The air in my home felt heavy, almost suffocating, as I remembered Nathan's words echoing in my mind. "You're not welcome anymore." I was still grappling with that heartbreak when I decided to take control of my life, despite the shadows of betrayal lurking around me. Mrs. Caldwell, my neighbor, had been dropping hints about unusual visitors at our house every Tuesday evening. "I just think you should know," she said over our shared fence one day, her eyes darting to my front porch, as if expecting someone to show up. "I've seen a lot of activity there. It doesn't feel right." Her words stuck with me, not just because I respected her opinion, but because I felt that familiar pit in my stomach growing deeper. That weekend, I made a decision. I bought a small hidden camera and installed it discreetly, facing the living room where most of the traffic happened. I had to know the truth about what was going on behind closed doors. After days of waiting, I finally gathered the courage to watch the footage. My breath caught in my throat when I saw Mark and Lauren, my sister-in-law, laughing together on the couch, their closeness sending daggers to my heart. They were more than just family. They were betraying me. "Are you serious?" I whispered to myself, feeling the anger boil inside. I needed proof to confront them, to make them face the reality of their actions. With every clip I watched, I gathered my resolve. I could not let this go unchallenged. I had to stay calm and collected. Days turned into weeks, and as the tension built at home, I focused on practical steps toward my independence. Changing the locks was a liberating move, a reaffirmation of my right to feel safe in my own home. Every click of the new lock echoed with a sense of newfound strength. Closing the joint bank account felt like cutting the final tie that kept me tethered to Mark's control over my finances. "I deserve better," I reminded myself as I walked out of the bank, feeling lighter with each step. The confrontations were inevitable. One rainy evening, after another silent dinner, I finally faced them in the living room. "We need to talk," I began, keeping my voice steady even though my heart raced in my chest. "I know what you two have been up to." Their faces morphed from confusion to panic, and just as I expected, they tried to manipulate the situation. "Olivia, you're overreacting. We're just being friendly," Mark said, his tone dismissive. "Friendly? Is that what you call this?" I gestured toward the hidden camera, feeling the weight of the evidence in my hands. "You both crossed a line. This isn't just family support, it's betrayal."
As the emotional confrontation unraveled, I felt a mix of fear and empowerment. They tried to frame me as the villain, but I stood my ground. Lauren's eyes darted as she realized how serious my accusations were. "You're just trying to ruin this family," she hissed. But I had already started the legal process, and soon the truth would come out in court. Standing in front of the judge, I felt an unexpected calm wash over me. I took a deep breath as I stepped into the courtroom. The air was thick with tension, and a knot formed in my stomach. Mark sat across from me, flanked by Lauren, who looked unbothered by the situation, almost smug. I was here not just for myself, but for Nathan, too. He deserved to know the truth about his father. The judge entered, and I felt my heart race. I clutched the folder containing the evidence I had painstakingly gathered, photos, videos, and detailed notes of their betrayals. I reminded myself of the calm I'd worked so hard to maintain, even when every part of me wanted to scream. As the proceedings began, I glanced over at Mark. He wore a facade of confidence that I found infuriating. "You were never supposed to find out," I imagined him thinking, as his eyes darted nervously from the judge to his lawyer. But I was ready. The judge called me to the stand first. I could feel the weight of his gaze as I took my place. "Miss Johnson, please explain your situation to the court," he said, his voice firm yet gentle. I cleared my throat and began. "Your Honor, I discovered that my husband, Mark, has been involved with my sister-in-law, Lauren. I found them together several times, sharing intimate moments in our home." I paused, feeling the tears threaten. "I installed a camera to gather evidence because I needed to know the truth." The words hung heavy in the air, and I could see the color drain from Mark's face. He turned to Lauren, and for a brief moment, I could see panic in his eyes. Lauren, however, quickly regained her composure. "That's not true," she shouted, her voice shrill. "She's just trying to ruin our lives." I felt a rush of anger. "This isn't about ruining lives, Lauren. It's about truth. You've betrayed me. You both have." I pointed a finger at them, my voice rising. The judge banged his gavel to restore order, but I didn't care. This was my moment to reclaim my life. As the hearing continued, I presented my evidence. Video clips played on a screen, showing moments I never wanted to witness. The gasps in the courtroom were palpable. Mark's expression shifted from defiance to desperation, and I felt a surge of power. I was no longer the victim. I was taking control. After what felt like an eternity, the judge asked Mark to explain himself. His voice wavered as he spoke. "Emily, just don't," I interrupted, feeling the flood of emotions. "You made your choices. Now you have to face the consequences." The proceedings concluded with the judge ruling in my favor. Relief washed over me as I realized I had won. Mark and Lauren had to face the fallout of their actions. They had underestimated my strength, and now I was free to rebuild my life. As I left the courtroom, I felt lighter. But it wasn't just about the victory. It was about reclaiming my story. I wanted to empower other women who might face similar betrayals. My experience could help them find their voices. Later, I gathered with a group of women to share my story. In that moment, I realized that pain could transform into strength. We were no longer alone. We had each other. The courtroom was filled with a heavy silence as the
Judge called the session to order. My heart raced, each beat echoing in my ears. I sat straight, hands clasped on my lap, feeling the sharp edge of the chair beneath me. This was it. I had fought hard to get here, and now the moment of truth had arrived. "Miss Caldwell," the judge addressed me, "please present your case." Taking a deep breath, I stood. "Your Honor, I have evidence that shows my husband, Mark, and my sister-in-law, Lauren, engaged in a deceitful affair that not only shattered my trust, but also undermined the very foundation of our family." My voice wavered slightly, but I steadied myself, focusing on the faces of the jury. They were listening. I presented the video footage from the hidden camera. Each moment played out vividly on the screen. Mark and Lauren's whispered conversations, their stolen glances. I felt my heart breaking all over again, but I had to stay strong. As the video ended, I looked at Mark sitting across the room. His expression was a mix of defiance and guilt. He shifted in his seat, and I could see the sweat forming on his brow. I felt a surge of empowerment. "Your Honor," I continued, "this isn't just about a betrayal. This is about my life, my dignity, and my right to choose the path forward." The words flowed from me, fueled by a determination I hadn't fully realized I possessed until now. Mark's lawyer stood up, countering my claims, insisting I was exaggerating. "This evidence does not show anything more than a misunderstanding between family members," he argued. I could sense the jury wavering, and it infuriated me. "Your Honor," I interjected, my voice steady, "an affair is never just a misunderstanding. It destroys trust and inflicts emotional damage." I took steps to protect myself and regain control of my life. I changed the locks, closed our joint account, and began my journey toward independence. I could feel the support in the room shift toward me. The judge listened attentively, and I seized the moment. I have fought to reclaim my life and to show other women that they are not alone. If I can stand here today, so can they. As I wrapped up my statement, I saw a flicker of understanding in the eyes of the jury. I knew I couldn't change what had happened, but I could change how I responded. With every word I spoke, I was reborn. After both sides presented their cases, the judge took a moment to deliberate. The anticipation was unbearable. When he finally returned, his expression was somber. "In light of the evidence presented, I find in favor of Miss Caldwell," he declared. Relief washed over me, mingling with disbelief. The tension that had built up over the months disappeared, replaced by a lighter heart. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. As I walked out of the courtroom, I was approached by other women who had been listening in the gallery. They shared their stories, their struggles, and I realized then that I wasn't just an individual. I was a part of something larger. "You inspired me today," one woman said, her eyes shining with hope. "I never thought I could do what you did," another added. I smiled, feeling the warmth of their support. "You can. We all can," I replied, a newfound strength coursing through me. This was just the beginning. As I stepped out of the courthouse, the weight of the world felt lighter on my shoulders. The sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm glow that felt almost surreal after the emotional storm I had just weathered. I needed a moment to breathe, to soak in the significance of my win. My heart raced, and for the first time in a long while, it wasn't out of fear, but of hope. "Emily!" a voice called from behind. I turned to see Julia, a woman I had briefly met inside the courthouse. Her eyes sparkled with encouragement. "You did it! You really did it!" "Thank you," I replied, trying to wrap my head around the whirlwind of emotions I was feeling. I can't believe I finally stood up for myself. Julia stepped closer, lowering her voice as if the walls could still hear us. "You were incredible in there. It was brave of you to show those videos. You've inspired so many." A small smile crept onto my face. "You can. We all can," I replied, a newfound strength coursing through me. This was just the beginning. As I stepped out of the courthouse, the weight of the world felt lighter on my shoulders. The sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm glow that felt almost surreal after the emotional storm I had just weathered. I needed a moment to breathe, to soak in the significance of my win. My heart raced, and for the first time in a long while, it wasn't out of fear, but of hope. "Emily!" a voice called from behind. I turned to see Julia, a woman I had briefly met inside the courthouse. Her eyes sparkled with encouragement. "You did it! You really did it!" "Thank you," I replied, trying to wrap my head around the whirlwind of emotions I was feeling. I can't believe I finally stood up for myself. Julia stepped closer, lowering her voice as if the walls could still hear us. "You were incredible in there. It was brave of you to show those videos. You've inspired so many." A small smile crept onto my face. I just wanted the truth to come out. I didn't want to be the victim anymore.
As we spoke, a small group of women gathered around us, each wearing expressions of understanding. It felt like they were drawn to my moment of victory, hungry for a glimmer of hope in their own struggles. I could feel the bonds forming, a silent agreement that we all shared a common experience. "Can we chat?" one woman asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I went through something similar. I could really use some support." "Of course," I said, gesturing for them to sit down at a nearby bench. I felt a surge of solidarity, an urge to share what I had learned. We can help each other through this. As we sat together, sharing stories of betrayal and reclaiming our lives, I realized that I wasn't alone. Each woman had faced her own battle, and now we were united in strength. I listened as they recounted their experiences, some heartbreaking and others triumphant. It was cathartic to know that we were not defined by our pasts, but by the courage we found to rise again. "I thought I was the only one," Julia said, tearing up, "but hearing you all talk, it makes me feel less isolated." I nodded in agreement. That's why we need to speak out. We can't let shame silence us. We have to reclaim our voices. A woman named Sarah spoke up, her voice steady despite her tears. "How did you gather the strength to confront him and Lauren?" I took a deep breath, recalling my journey. It wasn't easy. It took me time to find my voice. I started by taking small steps, changing the locks, opening my own bank account, and planning my exit strategy. I had to realize that I deserved better. Their eyes widened, and I could see them absorbing the advice like seeds ready to take root. "You deserve to be free, to be happy," I added, a fire igniting within me. It's not just about revenge, it's about reclaiming your life. As our conversation deepened, I found solace in their strength and resilience. We exchanged numbers, promising to stay in touch and offer support to one another. As I stepped out of the courthouse, the weight of the past few months began to lift. I had shared my truth and, against all odds, triumphed over the betrayal that had shattered my world. The sun shone brightly above, illuminating the path ahead of me, but it was the gathering of women just outside the doors that truly warmed my heart. "Emily," a voice called. It was Susan, a woman I had met briefly during my trial. She rushed towards me, her face beaming with admiration. "You were incredible in there. I couldn't believe the strength you showed." "Thank you, Susan," I replied, still processing the outpouring of support. I just wanted to reclaim my life. I had to fight back. As I spoke, other women began to approach, each of them with stories of their own pain and struggles. There was Linda, who had faced her husband's infidelity years ago and still bore the scars. She wrapped me in a warm embrace. "You've given so many of us hope today. You showed us that we could stand up for ourselves," she whispered. I felt a surge of emotion, realizing the ripple effect of my battle. "I didn't do it alone," I said, looking around at the faces that echoed understanding. "We're stronger together. We have to support one another." "Can you share how you found the courage?" asked Michelle, a quiet woman who had been nodding along. "I struggle to even think about leaving my marriage." "It starts with realizing you deserve more," I answered, my voice steady. I was terrified, but I knew I couldn't let them manipulate me any longer. When I found that hidden camera footage, it was almost like a switch flipped. I decided then that I needed to take control. The women listened, captivated as I recounted how I had changed the locks, closed our joint account, and began carving out my own financial independence. I thought about what it would take to be free, and I started taking small steps. It wasn't easy, but each decision brought me closer to who I wanted to be. "What happened when you confronted Mark?" Linda asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. "The confrontation was tough," I admitted. "He tried to downplay everything, but I stood firm. My ground. I reminded him of the pain he caused, not just to me, but to everyone involved. It was like pulling a thorn from my side. I paused and took a breath. When I walked away from that, I felt lighter. I knew I was finally on the right path. Just then, I noticed a larger crowd forming around us. Other women were drawing near, eager to join the conversation. I couldn't believe my eyes. It felt as though we were creating a movement right there on the steps of the courthouse. "Let's meet again," I suggested, my heart pounding at the thought. "We can form a support group for all of us, share stories, strategies, and strength. Who's in?" Hands shot up around me, and excited murmurs spread through the crowd. Count me in, said Michelle, her voice brimming with newfound confidence. As we exchanged numbers and made plans, I realized this was more than just a gathering. It was a sisterhood forming from the ashes of betrayal and pain.